Gas.
Hello and welcome. I am Fog Weaver. I go by Fog, but you can call me what you will. Today, I want to go over a few different reasons why I personally feel that you should already own Escape from Tarkov. Now, this is my first attempt at a YouTube video, so if you enjoy the content and want to see more, do not like and subscribe the channel. Just don't fucking do it, man. First up is Gunplay. If you've played Escape from Tarkov, or perhaps even spent enough time watching any of the amazing content creators and streamers, then you've probably already realized that Gunplay is much more complex than any other first-person shooter, and dare I say the best. That being said, there are an immense amount of features to consider when rating any avenue of the game, so try to keep in mind I'm only going to be covering the things I feel truly break the mold of a first-person shooter, such as bullet penetration. Your type, caliber of ammunition, the platform from which you are shooting, and the muzzle velocity of that platform, and of course the various materials you may be attempting to shoot through, like wooden doors, wooden walls, wooden boxes, thin sheet metal, and glass, are all taken into consideration for touching your target behind cover. That means smaller or slower moving calibers like some pistols and submachine guns will have trouble penetrating through even basic materials, including soft targets like players and scavs. Tarkov possesses one of the most realistic ballistic models you can find in a modern shooter, especially after the ballistic changes with the latest patch 12.12. So, depending on what you're throwing downrange, be it lead or shrapnel, every moving projectile on the map has a trajectory course and a velocity, meaning not just the actual trajectory of the grenade, but also each individual fragment of the grenade that disperses in all directions upon detonation, just like in real life. So naturally, when shooting or throwing a grenade over long distances, you have to factor in where the target will be, how far they are, and where your bullet or grenade will land for maximum effectiveness. Not to mention, it really helps to get comfortable with the recoil of your platform and ammunition type by spending decent amounts of time in the firing range or surviving in raid consecutively with the same weapon. Ballistics and recoil aside, most guns in the game really feel good. They don't feel like you're holding a virtual pixel. The guns feel heavy and in tune with your character. They almost feel real. When you're holding an awkward rifle or a long and heavy sniper, you can really feel the impact on your character in the game, and the changes it makes on your mobility and sound. That of course doesn't even factor in Tarkov's mass and new inertia system, which are generally factored by the weight of the gear you're wearing and the items carried in your bag. They do, however, directly impact how effective you can be with your weapon. The weight and ergonomics of your weapon determine how long you're able to sustain aiming down sights or steadying your aim in a scope. Of course, there are other factors that determine your character mobility and combat effectiveness, like damage sustained or broken and blackened limbs, but that would be a subject of its own. The important part is making sure that you are confident with the gear and weapons that you bring into raid, and being familiar with what they can do in a gunfight. On a brighter note, the customization features and options within the game are, well, truly unrivaled in any first-person or really any shooter period, except perhaps the legendary PimpMyGun.com. There are, however, some pretty interesting builds you can conjure in Escape from Tarkov as well. The developers of the game truly went above and beyond with implementing branding and customization when developing the game, because not only can you find nearly every weapon or attachment in the game in real life, it is also name brand or branded in some degree, meaning the builds that follow are near limitless in the mixtures and possibilities of each platform in the game. Therefore, you can actually build the guns in real life, or at least close. Which just goes to show there was an immense amount of time, money, and effort that went into making this game the one-of-a-kind game that it is. Developers equally spent as much time on making sure each and every attachment or combination of attachments directly impact the statistics and performance of your gun in the raid, meaning a stock AK would be completely outperformed by an AK that is fitted for handling recoil or precision at long range, which also brings us to a pro tip. While in the firing range, back away from the table, then press Tab, select Hideout at the bottom left corner once more. This will hide the annoying in-game cursor and allow you to aim freely. You can essentially build any weapon needed for any situation you might encounter, but always try to keep the size of the map you're playing on in mind. And also never forget that nearly any weapon or caliber in the game is capable of killing you, and targets wielding really any weapon should be dispatched accordingly. Escape from Tarkov has come a long way since its release date of July 27th, 2017. Even while the game is still in beta, there have been multiple different updates and patches that, for the most part, have kept the game enjoyable and refreshing. Though some argue variously over when the game should wipe periodically, or essentially reset everything except your name, which has now been roughly biannually. With the most recent wipe and patch, there have been some truly amazing additions such as new weapons, new ammunition types, new items, new gear, but most importantly, Lighthouse. Lighthouse is the most recently added map, second to Reserve, which was added October 27th of 2019. Lighthouse introduced a swarm of new scenery and map details, including the beautiful resorts and living facilities in this particular region of Norvinsk. Lighthouse also introduced formidable new AI that are rogue PMCs, or rogues for short. And they will absolutely decimate you if not approached carefully and somewhat tactically. Though it hasn't always been so streamlined, there have been many hiccups along the way. It is trial by error after all. Like the bug that appeared quite some time ago to make scavs on any map absolutely W-key you, and I mean clipping directly through entire layers of the map just to get you. In conclusion, Tarkov has seen various different versions, additions, expansions, and new features through the years. According to the devs, however, there are still a plethora of new features and additions yet to come that I'm very excited to see. Up next, we have ammunition and armor. In patch 12.12, you can spend so much time implementing the importance of ammunition and never even know it exists, or worse, be a moderate to veteran player and not realize ammunition is probably the most important aspect of PvP. In my experience so far, the most painful thing I can come across is finding a dead player or killing a player that might have had the advantage on me, only to find out it was because they were running a Chad at HK with Warmageddon rounds. Now, that doesn't actually sound so bad for this wipe in particular, being that better and higher tier ammunition has become accessible only via high level traders. But also there is a change with ballistics as mentioned with 12.12 earlier. So higher tier ammunition is still very much important. While the game does give you some basic information that typically gets glanced over, there are some extremely useful handcrafted ammo charts and analytics you can find that I'll link in the description to ensure you're able to penetrate any set of armor that you come across in the game. In real life, here in the United States, we use the NIJ armor standard. However, being the game is Russian, it's represented with the GOST R50744-95 Russian Federation standard for body armor. Now, it's hard to be sure the armor system is modeled 100% accurately. Though I do know that you wearing better gear and using better ammunition will greatly improve your survival rate. As a wise man once said, proper preparation prevents piss poor performance. It's literally the difference between surviving the raid and not surviving the raid. Having low tier or weak armor means it can be penetrated by nearly any round in the game, while having heavier, higher tier armor means you're almost guaranteed to survive a shot you're liable to take given the current ammunition situation and only being 2 months into the wipe. So, whenever building a gun or loading a magazine, try to keep a mental note or a quick link to charts and graphs for making sure you're using optimal ammunition for the weapon that you're using in the situation that you might encounter. Which brings us to our final point, emotion. If you've ever played a game where you were on a hot kill streak or in a clutch 1v4 or 1v5 situation, then you know all about adrenaline. But let me tell you, if you haven't played Escape from Tarkov, then you haven't quite experienced emotion in a video game, at least not quite like this. It's hard to know exactly what Tarkov is when categorizing the game. It's quite obviously a shooter, but it's also a survival game, meaning you must endure natural elements such as hunger, thirst, and your body's medical status, which can be pretty complex. But also, it quite easily qualifies as a horror game. One thing the developers of Escape from Tarkov nailed was immersion. Every little map detail, character sound, and environment sound, AI activity, weather, each add their own little expression of forging your raid into whatever you make it, even if that means you're sitting in a corner absolutely shitting yourself. If you like to play slow and every little sound may terrify you, hey, enjoy the ride. If you like to be aggressive and focus killing other players, with some practice and patience, Norvents can become your stomping ground. So for the average player with a lot of patience and a little bit of luck, you'll find yourself escaping from Tarkov in no time. But keep in mind the game is somewhat realistic and can be brutal.
Papa, какова была жизнь в Таркове?
Это была